The dawn does not break with glory, but with hesitation. A pale light crawls across the misted fields,
The
touching
plan
the
must be
thatched roofs
executed
of a
tonight.
village that shivers
I agree,
beneath the weight of
but
another
the risk
day.
is immense.
The frost clings stubbornly, its crystals melting into slow rivulets that drip from eaves like tears. Smoke curls from crooked chimneys, faint and uncertain, as if the hearths themselves are reluctant to wake. The air holds its breath, as though the world is not ready for the horn that soon splits the silence. It comes sudden, sharp, merciless. The Lord's call, carried down the valley like a blade through cloth. Its echo presses into every chest, into the marrow of bone. The sound is not invitation but command. It is not the voice of dawn, but of dominion. Families stir reluctantly, their movements weighed down not by sleep but by dread. The village belongs not to itself, but to the stone keep that looms above, where power resides behind cold walls. Men trudge toward the fields with heads bowed, feet sinking into soil still damp from yesterday's labor. The mud swallows their steps like a hungry beast, clutching at their ankles, reminding them of their station. Their hands are split and raw, bearing scars of tools that never rest. The rhythm of their life is etched into the land itself. Seed, harvest, tithe, obedience. Always obedience. Children cling to their mother's skirts, eyes wide, absorbing the cadence of survival before they can speak of it. They watch the calloused hands of their fathers, the bent backs of their mothers, and they learn, not from words but from silence. A silence punctuated only by the grind of millstones, the groan of carts, the clatter of pails. Childhood here is no sanctuary. It is a lesson in chains. Inside the keep, torches spit and flicker against stone walls that drip with damp. The air tastes of iron and soot. Tapestries hang heavy on the walls, embroidered with scenes of conquest and victory. Stories stitched by hands that never knew triumph themselves. They are not decorations but declarations, reminders that blood built these walls, and blood maintains them still. Beneath those proud banners, life tells another story. Servants scrub the floors with aching knees, scraping away sweat and spilt wine, the stains of indulgence and cruelty. The rhythm of brushes against stone is the rhythm of invisibility. A place polished so that it shines, but never for them. There is no laughter in the keep, only the grinding of life beneath decree. Axes bite into wood, stones turn against each other, wheels groan under weight. Even the music of the blacksmith's forge is not celebration, but obligation. Sparks leap into the air like brief rebellions, only to vanish in the dark. His hammer sings for fields he does not own, for wars he will never fight, for a future he will never taste. In the village, a mother pulls her child close, pressing a small face into her shoulder. The smell of damp wool, of earth, of stale bread clings between them. Her lips move in prayer, though her heart is uncertain if heaven listens here. Perhaps God lingers only in the chapel of the Lord, where gold cups catch candlelight and voices echo in Latin no peasant tongue can follow. Yet still she prays, because to pray is the last freedom left. The day unfolds not in hours but in burdens. The plow drags, the oxen strain, the soil resists. Blisters rise beneath rope and wood. The cold eats into marrow even as sweat trickles down spines. Hunger gnaws quietly, a shadow always present, waiting to take its due. Bread is rationed not by hunger but by decree, the weight of grain measured out like judgment. Yet, in the smallest of corners, defiance breathes. A boy reaches for a stolen apple, hand trembling, heart thundering against his ribs. In that gesture, fragile and reckless, is rebellion itself. For one bite of sweetness, he risks the Lord's wrath, the whip, the stocks. And still he takes it, because in the hollow between obedience and death, life insists on tasting more than dust. Even the animals seem to hold secrets. A tethered cow stares with wide, wet eyes at the frost-hardened grass, chewing slowly as though time were its own possession. In that gaze there is no fear of decree, no awareness of chains. There is only presence, a reminder that existence need not bow to power. The sun climbs higher, though it is no comfort. Its light gilds the horizon, touching the valley in gold, but the shadows remain thick in the corners of obligation. The keep swallows that light, its walls built not to welcome but to dominate. Power lives not in warmth but in shadow. Still, something lingers beneath, a pulse too stubborn to die. It hums in the rhythm of weary feet that march to fields yet dream of freedom. It glimmers in whispered stories by firelight, when children hear of saints and warriors who rose from nothing. It trembles in the quiet exchange of bread between neighbors, a kindness that survives despite hunger. For what is humanity but this contradiction? Bound by chains, yet always seeking to break them. Crushed by weight, yet always finding the strength to rise. The feudal world grinds its people like grain between stones. Yet in every spark, every stolen apple, every whispered prayer, there is proof that life cannot be wholly mastered. The day ends as it began, not with glory, but with weariness. Smoke drifts once more from hearths, carrying with it the scent of meager meals. Families huddle close, not in warmth but in necessity. The horn is silent now, but its echo lingers, etched into muscle and memory. The Lord feasts behind stone walls. The villagers gnaw crusts in silence. And yet, even in silence, stories are born. A child drifts to sleep listening to the murmur of a mother's voice, her words shaping hope out of shadows. Somewhere, a blacksmith's hammer rests, cooling in the dark, though the embers whisper that tomorrow it will sing again. In the stillness, in the ache, in the frost, something waits. The night closes in, heavy but not complete. For in the hollow between darkness and dawn, in the fragile breath of those who endure, the human spirit beats on, not conquered, not extinguished, only waiting. And as the stars pierce the velvet sky above the valley, cold and eternal, they seem to ask a question. How long can such a people endure? How long before the silence breaks, before obedience gives way to fire? The answer belongs to the next dawn. The bell tolls. Its sound does not ring clear, but heavy, like iron dragged across stone. A groan that shakes the bones of the village awake. In the fog-thick morning, it is neither melody nor command, but something older, something that reminds men and women alike that their bodies are not their own. They stir from straw beds damp with night's chill, breath hanging in the air like ghostly smoke, and shuffle toward the sound as if pulled by an unseen chain. The path to the manor is a scar of mud carved deep by countless footsteps, rutted by wheels, slick with last night's rain. Along it, shapes move. Peasants hunched beneath threadbare hoods, their figures swallowed by mist. From the side of the road, the stink of dung and wet straw rises, thick enough to choke. A baby wails in its mother's arms, the cry quickly hushed beneath her palm, not out of comfort but necessity. For the Lord does not care to hear the noise of hunger. High above them, at the balcony of stone, the Lord waits. His robes shimmer with threads of gold, catching the weak light of a reluctant sun. They glimmer like fire on water, like something from a world apart. His gaze is cold, detached, calculating, a man who looks upon his people as one might look upon a field of oxen, useful, expendable, nameless. At his feet, dogs snarl and strain at their leashes, teeth wet with saliva. The lash of a whip cracks, sharp as thunder, and though the sound is swallowed quickly by the fog, it lingers in every peasant's chest. The fields stretch beyond the manor, dark soil resisting plow and hand alike. Men stoop, their spines bent like bows. Women kneel, their fingers raw as they scatter seed into trenches of stubborn earth. Each movement is small, unremarkable, yet each carries the weight of hope, a seed not just for grain, but for survival. Every furrow drawn is a prayer, every calloused palm pressed against soil a plea for mercy from a world that seldom gives it. A boy works among them. His tunic is torn at the seams, his hands blistered though they are scarcely large enough to hold the handle of the plow. He lifts his gaze once, drawn by the faint suggestion of a horizon beyond these stone walls. He imagines skies untethered by smoke, rivers that do not carry the taste of ash, a world where he may run without command. Yet the moment passes. The shout of an overseer drags his gaze back to the earth. His hands move again, and his back bends, bent not by years, but by the weight of expectation, of duty pressed onto him before he has known what life without chains might feel like. Beyond the fields, the forge screams. Sparks leap into the air as iron is hammered into shape. The sound carries across the village, a ringing reminder of power and servitude. Tools for the fields, yes, but also blades, nails, shackles. The smoke curls upward in gray spirals, merging with the fog until it seems that heaven itself is bound by the soot of men's labor. The iron bends beneath hammer and flame, but in truth, it is the people who bend. Their spirits tempered, their wills tested, shaped into the mold their masters demand. Inside the manor hall, a different world breathes. Fire roars in the hearth. Wine flows in silver goblets. The table groans beneath roasted meats, dripping fat onto platters of polished wood. Laughter rises, easy and careless, echoing against high vaulted ceilings where banners hang like sleeping giants. Here, hunger is but a word, labor a story told by others. The Lord dines, his lips stained with wine, while in the shadows of the hall his servants move soundlessly, eyes lowered, hands swift. The contrast bleeds like a wound. Beyond these stone walls, stomachs gnaw at themselves, fingers tremble with fatigue, bones ache for rest. Yet here comfort drips like honey, thick and endless. It is not merely a difference of wealth. It is a separation of worlds. Two realms that touch but never blend. One of feast, one of famine. And yet, in the cracks of this order, life breathes. In the fields, among the lines of bent backs and silent mouths, eyes meet. A loaf, stolen from the bakehouse, passes quietly from hand to hand. A joke is whispered, lips pressed to ear, and though the laughter is quickly hidden, it is laughter all the same. Children chase one another through the mud when no one is watching, their shouts of joy startling the crows into flight. A woman presses a flower into her bodice, its color a secret flame against the gray. Small rebellions, fleeting as the mist, yet they live, stubborn, defiant. The village exhales together, a sigh carried on the breath of many. Resignation, yes, but hope as well, buried deep like seed beneath frost. Life here is relentless, a rhythm of toil and hunger, of orders given and endured. Yet it is alive, marked by gestures of care, by bonds forged in silence. Beneath the watch of lords and the weight of chains, humanity still stirs, fierce and quiet. As the day wanes, the bell tolls again. Its voice echoes across the fields, calling the people to end what they began in darkness. Shadows lengthen, swallowing the path, and the fog returns, soft as ash, heavy as sorrow. One by one, the peasants shuffle back to their huts, their bodies aching, their spirits tethered. Fires flicker weakly in the night, more smoke than flame, more hunger than warmth. And yet, somewhere, a song begins. Low at first, a murmur in the dark, hummed by a mother rocking her child. Another voice joins, then another, until the huts themselves seem to breathe the melody. Not triumphant, not loud, but steady. A song to keep the cold away, to remind the living that they are more than hands for plowing and backs for bending. The Lord does not hear it. The dogs do not stir. But the village does, and in their quiet defiance, in their whispered hymns and hidden smiles, something endures. The night settles heavy. The torches at the manor gate burn low. Beyond them, the fields sleep under frost, the soil clutching its buried seeds. The boy lies awake, staring at the rafters above his head, his mind still reaching for skies beyond the stone. Somewhere in that silence, in that breath held between despair and dawn, a question lingers, unspoken but felt by all who wake and toil beneath these walls. How long can chains hold, when the human spirit dreams of flight? The first light of day pierces the narrow arrow slits of the keep, spilling across cold stone like pale knives. The castle stirs in silence before its lord, every shadow bent to his dominion. Dust motes drift in the frozen air, suspended as though time itself dares not move without permission. Beyond these walls, the world awakens to a rhythm older than memory, a rhythm not of choice, but of command. The market square quivers beneath the weight of footsteps. Boots slap the mud. Hooves strike sparks from cobbles slick with last night's rain. Voices rise and fall in hurried bargains, words bartered not for riches, but for survival. A woman grips a strip of salted fish so tightly the brine seeps into her skin. The scent of wet leather clings to the air, mingling with smoke curling from blackened chimneys. Hunger sits here, invisible but undeniable, like a second presence in every home, in every glance. Through this chaos moves a girl, scarcely taller than the baskets she carries. She clutches her eggs with trembling hands, each shell slick with dew, with fragility, with fear. Her eyes dart like sparrows between soldiers patrolling the edge of the square. Their armor clinks with the rhythm of authority, every polished plate a reminder that defiance is punished not with words, but with steel. The girl bows low as they pass, the way she has been taught. Survival here is a choreography. Bow low, speak little, endure much. Beyond the square, in the granaries, the air thickens. The scent of grain lies heavy, damp with mildew, the odor of both sustenance and decay. Children with stooped shoulders haul sacks larger than their bodies, their arms trembling under the weight of a harvest not their own. Old men with hollow cheeks shuffle in silence, each breath a reminder that labor is not spared for the young or the weary. Grain is counted not as nourishment, but as power. Every kernel belongs first to the Lord. From the tower above, bells toll. The sound is deep, commanding, relentless. Each strike cleaves the day into obedience. The first bell for labor, the second for silence, the third for prayer that tastes of duty more than faith. Time itself bends beneath the weight of expectation. Dreams have no place here. They are pressed flat beneath the hours, like wildflowers crushed under cartwheels. And yet, beneath this crushing weight, life refuses extinction. In dim corners of alleys, laughter still escapes. A child's giggle over a stone game scratched into the dirt. In the stables, a cow hums low, her breath warm against the chill. Wind whispers through gnarled branches on the edge of the fields, carrying with it the faint promise of something beyond walls and wages. Even in the silence of servitude, the world murmurs of endurance. At the gates, a lone traveler halts. His cloak is sodden with rain, the fabric clinging to weary shoulders. He studies the stone walls, tracing the scars of sieges long past, imagining, if only for a heartbeat, what freedom might taste like, what life might be if not shackled to another's name. Yet imagination gives no bread. With a breath that feels like surrender, he steps forward, pulled into the current of feudal existence. Shadows stretch across the walls as the day wanes, their long fingers creeping over stone, over soil, over souls. Every shadow carries a reminder that power demands sacrifice, and freedom, once glimpsed, is a burden heavier than chains. Those who remember liberty carry it silently, hidden deep like smoldering embers, waiting for air. But for now, silence rules. At the Lord's table, meat is carved thick, and goblets overflow with crimson wine. In the huts beyond the walls, bread is torn into slivers, broth thinned with water until it resembles little more than memory. Children sleep with empty bellies, their dreams chasing fields of grain that will never belong to them. Mothers whisper prayers into the dark, their words dissolving against the rafters. In the chapel, candles burn low, their wax bleeding onto stone like pale tears. A priest mutters scripture, his voice heavy with resignation. Faith is not freedom here. It is another tether, another yoke to bear. And yet in the back pews, a woman hums softly, her voice threading through the gloom, fragile but unbroken, like a single candle resisting the dark. The watchtower calls midnight with a horn. Dogs bark in the lanes. Somewhere in the alleys, a fight erupts. Two men snarling over scraps, fists cracking against bone. The soldiers come swiftly, their shadows cutting across the mud, iron ringing against iron. Silence falls again. The night swallows its cries, as if the earth itself conspires to keep obedience unbroken. Still, beyond the palisade, the fields whisper with secrets. The river coils in silver silence, its current carrying stories to places unseen. Stars tremble above the roofs, untouchable, eternal, gazed upon by both lord and serf alike. In their light, the illusion of equality lingers, if only for a moment. As dawn approaches once more, the cycle renews. The bell will sound, the girl will return with her basket, the soldiers will patrol, and the Lord will feast. The rhythm of feudal life grinds on, relentless as the turning of the wheel, each spoke carved from flesh, faith, and silence. And yet, beneath this rhythm, something lingers, a murmur of rebellion not yet spoken, a hope not yet crushed, a memory of freedom carried like contraband beneath the heart. It waits in the dark, in the laughter of children, in the whisper of wind, in the gaze of the traveler who has not yet forgotten. The story does not end in silence. Cannot. For where there is hunger, there is the seed of defiance. Where there is cruelty, there is the echo of resistance. And as shadows lengthen once more across the walls, the question rises with them, unyielding, unanswered. How long can chains hold against the will to be free? Frost clings to the edges of wooden shutters, fragile veins of ice etched by the hand of a silent winter. A rooster's crow tears through the stillness, a cry that carries not just through the village but into the marrow of all who stir from uneasy sleep. The air is heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and smoke, as though the world itself breathes reluctantly. In the yard, oxen shift uneasily, their broad flanks steaming, ropes worn thin digging into their hides. Their movements are slow, resigned, as if they, too, know the rhythm of toil that governs every dawn. From the blacksmith's forge, the hammer falls, each strike echoing like thunder rolled across stone cottages. Sparks leap into the fog, bright embers swallowed as quickly as they are born. Like the fleeting hopes of those who labor here, villagers gather in the square, their hands cracked and raw, fingers stiff from cold and endless work. Breath clouds the morning, each exhale rising like a prayer into the pale sky. They await the sound of boots, the scrape of authority carried not by steel, but by parchment. And soon it comes. The Lord's emissary emerges from the mist, cloaked in velvet dark as blood. His stride is sharp, precise, his boots snapping against cobblestones with the rhythm of judgment. In his gloved hand, sealed decrees weigh heavier than iron, for within them lie new burdens, tithes, orders, decrees carved not with ink but with bone and hunger. The villagers lower their eyes, not out of reverence, but of survival. To meet his gaze is to invite remembrance, and remembrance is dangerous. Mothers draw their children close, wrapping them in cloaks patched and worn thin. The children's faces bury against shoulders that smell of smoke, of sweat, of a home clinging together despite scarcity. Fathers turn wordlessly to their work, their silence louder than any lament, for their bodies have become living archives of servitude. Spines bent, muscles hardened, hands scarred with proof of generations spent feeding thrones they will never see. Inside the keep, torches sway, their flames bending against the drafts that snake through stone halls. They cast flickering light upon tapestries hung with care and cruelty alike. Woven threads shimmer faintly, depicting battles long past, crowns that gleam eternal, blood turned into art. Yet the beauty is cold, remote, as though stitched not to inspire but to remind power is eternal, and those who gaze upon it are fleeting. In the kitchens, iron pots hiss and bubble, the air thick with steam and the sharp tang of onions and broth. Servants move quickly, eyes lowered, each clatter of spoon or pot a reminder of their place in this hierarchy of silence. Theirs is a world of ceaseless motion, of duty that allows no pause, no hunger of their own. Beyond the walls, the fields stretch wide and sodden, boots sinking into mud that clings without mercy. The land devours as much as it yields, its indifference colder than the frost itself. Yet still, in the midst of hardship, something fragile breathes. A stolen glance shared across the square, a fleeting spark of warmth in a world designed to extinguish it. A loaf of bread, torn and passed quietly from one hand to another, becomes more than sustenance. It becomes rebellion, proof that humanity survives in whispers even when it cannot in shouts. A fire flickers in the hearth, its glow pulling the weary into its circle, warding off the gnaw of winter's teeth. For though their days are written by decree, the villagers find ways to write their nights. Around the fire, songs rise low and trembling, not of glory, but of endurance. Old tales, spoken in hushed tones, recall ancestors who bore the same weight, who planted seeds of hope in ground salted by despair. These stories pass like torches, their flames fragile, yet enough to keep the dark at bay. The emissary departs, velvet trailing over cobblestone, leaving silence in his wake. But that silence is not empty. It is heavy, swollen with thoughts unspoken, with the weight of survival calculated moment by moment. The villagers disperse, shoulders bowed, but within them pulses a truth the crown cannot touch. The knowledge that even under chains, there can be choice. A choice to share, to endure, to hold on to warmth when the world offers only cold. Night descends swiftly, the frost thickening once more along shuttered windows. The blacksmith's hammer stills. The oxen sleep beneath the stars, their breaths rising in clouds that glow in the moonlight. Inside each cottage, a candle burns low, its flame trembling against drafts, yet refusing to die. Shadows dance across walls rough-hewn with age, carrying with them the silent vows of those who live within. Tomorrow, we rise again. Tomorrow, we endure. And in that endurance, something dangerous takes root. For the frost that binds can also break. The silence that suffocates can also conceal. Beneath the weight of decrees and banners, beneath velvet and steel, there lingers a defiance. delicate as frost melting beneath the hesitant warmth of a morning sun. The village exhales as one, a breath shared across doors, across fires, across lives bound not by choice but by necessity. And in that breath lies the seed of tomorrow's question. How long can the silence hold before the whisper becomes a voice, and the voice becomes a storm? A river cuts silver through the valley, winding like a vein through the body of the land. Its murmur is soft, a secret song carried on the morning mist, a song heard only by those whose backs bend and whose hands bleed along its banks. The peasants move as shadows, dragging nets heavy with glistening scales, mending fences with twine as brittle as their bones, hauling bundles that cut into blistered palms. Their rhythm is not their own. It is dictated by the turning of seasons and the tightening grip of lords, a rhythm steady and merciless, like the tolling of a bell that no one dares to silence. Smoke drifts upward from low huts, mingling with the sharp scent of wet clay and animal hides, an incense of survival that stains every breath. Children scurry barefoot over mud and straw, chasing stubborn chickens, their laughter fragile, swallowed quickly by the press of duty that waits for them as surely as hunger waits at the edge of night. From the hill above, the keep looms like a clenched fist, its stone walls gazing down with a cold authority. Every chuckle, every whisper, every stolen moment of joy is measured against its shadow. Through the morning fog, soldiers march, their steps heavy, their armor clinking like warning bells. Each metallic note is a reminder. The Lord's will is not a suggestion, but a command. Their eyes sweep over the fields as though searching for cracks in obedience. For a glance held too long, a posture too defiant. The peasants lower their gaze, for to look too boldly is to risk being seen. And yet, beneath lowered eyes, resentment simmers, as steady as the fire smoldering in hearths. In the barns, straw crunches beneath shifting feet, oxen groan with the weight of harness and plow, and men wipe sweat from their brows, knowing the harvest is never theirs to claim. In the kitchens, knives scrape against wooden boards, rhythm sharp and precise, learned through years of scarcity. Meat is measured by the bone, grain by the handful. Every act, sowing seeds, binding wounds, scrubbing linen until knuckles split, is performed under the shadow of expectation. Failure is not an option, and success is never reward, only obligation. A woman kneels by the hearth, her hands folded not in rest, but in plea. The fire before her crackles, its smoke curling upward like a ghost that carries her whispers toward indifferent skies. She prays in fragments, syllables of fear and hope entwined. Let the fever break. Let the child wake. Let tomorrow bring mercy. Her voice trembles, fragile as a reed in wind, yet it persists. Faith is the only wealth she can claim, and even that feels taxed by silence. The horizon bleeds gold as the sun rises, painting the valley in fleeting beauty. The light does not soften the hierarchy. It sharpens it. Fields glow, river shimmers, stone walls blaze with fire. And still the weight presses down. Lords feast, soldiers watch, peasants labor. And yet, within that pressing, life stirs with a stubborn pulse. A hand squeezes another beneath a table. A child hums while carrying kindling. A boy dares to dream of fields that belong to him, not to the keep. Small rebellions of spirit, invisible to the armored eyes that patrol above. For endurance is its own form of defiance. Scarcity teaches precision. Hunger sharpens memory. The people remember seasons of plague, winters of starvation, raids that left barns hollow and hearts shattered. They remember, and still they rise with dawn. They bend but do not break. Their backs may bow, but within them something whispers, soft but steady, that chains do not reach the marrow. And yet, the Lord's gaze never lifts. From the highest tower he watches. His eyes scan the fields as though he can read the very thoughts of those below. To him, the people are not flesh but numbers, not voices but obligations. Each blistered hand is a coin to be counted, each beating heart a tool to be used. Mercy is a luxury he cannot afford, or perhaps a language he does not speak. His silence is its own cruelty, heavier than the clang of swords. The peasants know this silence. It wraps around them like a cloak they did not choose, and still their lives beat beneath it. The crack of an axe splitting wood, the lowing of cattle, the laughter of children chasing after a hoop of twisted reed. All these sounds weave together, fragile threads of humanity stitched against the vast cloth of oppression. At night, when the fires dim and only the embers glow, stories breathe into the dark. Old voices tell of ancestors who walked freer paths, of rivers that once belonged to no lord, of fields sown by hands that reaped what they sowed. These tales are not history, not entirely. They are longing dressed as memory, a defiance that lives not in sword or rebellion, but in the refusal to forget. One girl, listening by the hearth, asks her grandmother, "Will it ever be ours again?" The old woman strokes her hair, her eyes reflecting both sorrow and flame. She does not answer, for hope is a dangerous gift. But in her silence, the girl feels the weight of something unspoken, the endurance of those who wait and still dream. The river continues its murmur through the valley, silver and endless. It witnesses everything. Nets dragging, soldiers marching, prayers whispered, tears swallowed. It carries the secrets of peasants and lords alike, and though it bends, it never stops. The song is older than stone walls, older than chains, and in its ceaseless flow, it whispers of time, of seasons yet to come, of shifts unseen, of days when shadows might fall differently across the valley. For even as life here bends under chains, it breathes, stubborn, aching, unbroken. It clings to fleeting joys, a child's laugh, a kiss stolen behind a barn door, a loaf shared though it means hunger tomorrow. These are not rebellions of sword and fire. They are rebellions of existence. And existence, in the face of oppression, is a quiet revolution. The peasants rise again with dawn, as they always will, for life demands it. But beneath the clinking armor, beneath the watchful eyes of the keep, beneath the hunger and silence, there grows something slow, something steady. A question, a dream, a pulse of defiance too small yet to name, but strong enough to endure. The valley does not yet know what storms will come, what banners will rise, what blood will be spilled upon its fields. But in the quiet persistence of those who bow without breaking, the seeds of tomorrow lie buried, waiting for their season. And as the sun dips once more, casting the river in firelight, a prayer curls upward with the smoke, that mercy might find its way into stone hearts, or failing that freedom might one day rise from the soil itself. The chapter closes not with triumph, but with breath, with the stubborn insistence of life lived under chains, and the faint, trembling promise that chains, too, can rust. The wind sweeps across barren fields, sharp as a blade, carrying the tang of iron and the faint, ceaseless clang of hammers from the forge. It rattles through the skeletal branches, sighing like the restless ghosts of wars long past. The villagers stoop beneath it, cloaks pulled close, their hoods heavy with damp. The fabric is threadbare, stitched and restitched by hands that can no longer keep pace with hunger's steady advance. Boots sink into frozen mud, and each footprint fills with dirty water, a reflection of faces dulled by endless toil. Above them, riders prowl. The Lord's men, black silhouettes on horses frosted with breath, circling like carrion crows. Their eyes are keen, hunting for defiance in bent spines, for hesitation in trembling hands. The jingle of bridles, the thud of hooves, the cruel scrape of a laugh echo over the village like a second tolling bell. Fear trails in their wake, thick as smoke. The villagers bow their heads lower, their silence a fragile shield against steel. A boy clutches a lamb to his chest. Its fleece is damp with morning mist, its warmth a fragile barrier against the cutting air. His fingers burrow into its wool, desperate to trap even a shred of comfort. He knows, though he cannot speak it, that the lamb is both salvation and sacrifice, that its tender bleat may one day be muffled by the knife. In the world he inhabits, nurture is always shadowed by necessity, and innocence does not survive without cost. Within the manor, the wind follows, whispering through drafty corridors lined with tapestries. The woven kings of old sway in the cold breath, their conquests depicted in thread, their glory preserved while the servants who brush past remain faceless and unnamed. Shadows stretch long here. Servants move like smoke, their presence felt more than seen. Their silence oils the wheels of power. Their invisibility ensures its smooth turning. The Lord feasts, and the unseen hands that bake his bread, pour his wine, and stoke his fires linger like ghosts in the rafters. Beyond the walls the market stirs, a square of barter and obligation, where the rhythm of life beats under the weight of dominion. Bread is exchanged not for coin, but for labor, hours bent in the fields, days lost to another's command. Wool passes from hand to hand, soft to the touch, but harsh in its cost. A smile is offered, brief as candlelight, then buried quickly beneath layers of fatigue. For even joy must be hidden where power watches. Above it all, the bell tolls. Each peal is steady, merciless, a declaration that time does not belong to those who hear it, but to those who command it. Hours are harvested like wheat, owned by the Lord who gathers them. The peasants live not in years but in duties, not in days but in debts. The bell is a chain made of sound, invisible, inescapable. Yet still the fragile fire of humanity flickers. Beneath the hood of a cloak, two eyes meet and linger. In the shadow of a barn, a promise is whispered, clumsy words, but heavy with hope. A hand, calloused and cracked, finds another, and for a moment the weight of the world lifts. These moments, brief and quiet, are rebellions in themselves. Against the vast machinery of feudal power, tenderness is defiance, love is resistance. Night descends early. Torches bloom against the dark, their flames bending in the wind. Smoke curls skyward, carrying with it the smell of hearth fire and boiled grain. In the cottages, families huddle close, chasing warmth in one another's breath. Stories are told in low voices, of saints and monsters, of kings who may one day fall. Children drift into uneasy sleep to the rhythm of prayers whispered over them. Charms against hunger, against the chill, against the horsemen who prowl even in dreams. But sleep does not reach all. In the manor's great hall, laughter rings coarse and full, spilling from the lips of men who feast by right of lineage. Fat glistens on roasted meat, wine spills like blood across the table. Musicians pluck strings with numb fingers, eyes lowered, faces pale in torchlight. The music rises not as joy, but as command. For in these walls even song is labor. Outside, in the frozen fields, the earth waits. Seeds slumber beneath the soil, mute and patient, trusting spring though spring feels far away. The villager's breath rises in white clouds, vanishing into the dark. They too wait, though waiting here is perilous. For in the cycle of feudal life, hunger does not wait, and neither does the hand that collects the tithe. Yet always, within the silence, there is a spark, The spark is carried in the lamb's warmth against the boy's chest, in the clasp of weary hands in the market square, in the whispered promise exchanged beneath the barn roof. The lords own the land, the hours, the very breath of their serfs, but they cannot own these sparks. These fragments of humanity, stubborn and enduring, slip through the cracks of tyranny like light through broken shutters. And so, even beneath frost and fear, life persists. It asserts itself quietly, fiercely, like green shoots pushing through stone. The clang of the forge, the toll of the bell, the thud of hooves, these are the rhythms of domination. But the heartbeat that answers them is softer, older, eternal. It beats in the lullabies of mothers, in the sweat of fathers, in the laughter that dares to rise even in shadow. The wind still sweeps the barren fields. The riders still circle. The bell still tolls. But in the dark corners of cottages, in the stolen glances of the market, in the lamb's steady breathing against a boy's chest, a different truth endures. One that no tapestry, no bell, no rider can erase. Life, fragile and defiant, continues. And as the torches gutter low and the village succumbs to uneasy sleep, a question drifts on the night air, carried by the same wind that brought the clang of hammers and the chill of fear. How long can such spark survive before the storm demands its price?